There was a guy in my town who stalked women at the furniture store. He would watch women pick out new chairs and he would just linger there and drop these strange comments, "That chair would look nice in my den." Then one night he followed one of the women home. He sneaked into their living room and then wait for them to enter the room. He'd then jump out and surprise them. He'd yell, "I knew you took my chair." And he'd scream and chase them. This happened over the course of 5 years. The local police never did anything because he was brother with the sheriff. Women couldn't buy furniture by themselves. They had to start bringing chaperones. When I was younger, me and my twin brother would help our friend do his paper route. One summer we could smell something gross coming from one of the houses. We all didn't think anything of it until 3 days later when the smell was reaching down the driveway. We went to the back door where he normally dropped the paper and noticed it was open. We went in and looked around the house and found the owner dead. He had died of a heart attack and his cats were eating him.
I was lying in bed one night and trying to fall asleep. I lay there and stared around my dark room until my eyes had adjusted. I rolled over towards my bedroom door, which had my vanity table and I think my laundry basket on that same wall. I have OCD, so everything I own is neat and tidy, so is its place. I can't help but notice that the chair to my vanity table was pulled out and facing me. So I flip up my covers and stop, because it looks like a person is sitting in the chair. I quickly lay down and pull the covers back over my body. I lay there and stared at that figure in my chair for a few minutes. I finally gained the courage to speak. "Why are you just sitting there, staring at me? Go away." Right after I made that comment, I felt this immense pressure on my chest, like someone was sitting on me. It got so intense, I couldn't even speak. Felt like my mouth and nose had been covered. I tried to scream, but couldn't. Finally got my arm out of the blanket and was able to smack the wall. All of a sudden, my mother opened the door. The pressure on my chest, mouth and nose had been lifted. She turns on the light and was furious at me, because I was making noises like a little kid or something. Then she's like, "What is all over your face?" I had an effing handprint across the front of my face, like somebody slapped the shit out me. So I lied, and said that I got wrapped up in the blanket, etc. So years passed, I've moved out. I'm over visiting one day and my stepdad is remodeling my old bedroom. We're just chatting and I shared my story. Now, for your information, he's lived in the house for 60 years. That's his childhood home. He tells me that an old German woman used to reside in my bedroom. She was like the maid housekeeper for the previous owners and she died in that room. Just recently, I found out that my older sister who once lived in that room shares a very similar experience. That old ghost bag tried to suffocate both of us. I swear to God, if I get possession of that house, I will bulldoze it. That's not my first encounter in that house, but it's the scariest.
Home alone. Best friend's parents were out of town one weekend and she had the house to herself. Went about her business having dinner, watching TV, then decided to go to bed. She was lying in her bed with her back to her closet when she heard the door open. She somehow pretended to be asleep. The man who was hiding in the closet walked around her, bed to the side she was laying facing, gently stroked her hair and face, then left. She immediately called her boyfriend to ask him to come over, then called her parents and then the police. Long story short, this man had been getting into their home via doggy door and he'd been living in a tent in the foresty area behind their home for months to creep on her. They found a ton of surveillance footage of her sleeping and pieces of her clothes and stuff. There was a hunter in the woods, who, after a long day of hunting, was in the middle of an immense forest. It was getting dark, and having lost his bearings, he decided to head in one direction until he was clear of the increasingly oppressive foliage. After what seemed like hours, he came across a small cabin. Realizing how dark it had grown, he decided to see if he could stay there for the night. The door was open, nobody was inside. The hunter laid down on the bed, deciding to explain himself to the owner in the morning. As he looked around, he was surprised to see the walls decorated by many portraits, all painted in incredible detail. They seemed to be staring down at him, with looks of hatred. He felt uncomfortable. Exhausted, he turned to face the wall to ignore the many hateful faces and soon fell asleep. He was awakened by the sun shining on him. After his eyes had adjusted, he realizes that the cabin does not have portraits, only windows.
So I'm 21, and I just moved out of my parents' house and into an apartment with one of my friends, also the same age as me. We are subletting an apartment from my aunt, who lived here for about 9 years before buying her own home. So things started off kind of creepy, but not like completely alarming. The first thing I took notice of was that my bedroom closet was always opening seemingly by itself. I never actually saw it opening, but when I would go and then coke back, it would always be open when I left it closed. But like I said, I didn't look too much into it. The next bit of weirdness once again came in the form of an inconvenience. We came back from work and found sand all over the floor of our living room. I don't know what to make of that, but something we both found to be incredibly unsettling was that there were 2 framed pictures that we had hanging in the hall that were both found shattered on the floor. One of them was a picture of my friend and her boyfriend, the other was a picture of me and my brother. After that we called my aunt to come over and check the apartment. She turned the place over, but found nothing to immediately imply forced entry. She called another officer over to the apartment to file a proper report. We ended up staying at her house that night, which meant we wouldn't be around for the next thing. So my aunt had left a box at the apartment when she moved that just had some old bras, underwear, and shorts. When we got back to the apartment, all of that box's content was scattered over in my bed. I don't think it just floated into the bedroom and dumped itself over the bed. I don't know what's going on, to be honest. I talked to my aunt and she said she never had any weird experiences in the apartment. This seems less paranormal to me and more human. The only thing is I don't know how someone is getting in here. And before anyone asks, my aunt checked literally every possible entryway and there was nothing. So whoever it is either already has access to the apartment or is capable of making it in without damaging the foundation. Either way, I'm not comfortable with what's happening.
A mother's love. Some people actively go out looking for ghost encounters, and every once in a while, they find one. When Kevin was a teenager, he and his friends had heard about a dangerous turn on the nearby highway that caused many accidents over the years. It was now haunted. The most well-known story was of a mother who took her own life after her son had crashed his car and died there. It was said around town that her ghost remained at the deadly turn to protect people from ending up like her deceased child. Kevin and his friends decided to put that theory to the test. At night, Kevin drove his friends out to the highway. When the group of boys arrived at the turn, they pulled over. They'd brought a bag of flour with them and proceeded to sprinkle the white powder on the road, the grass, and the car. The idea was to get footprints to prove that the ghost was indeed real. The boys hopped back in and began to take the car around the turn. Kevin accelerated faster and faster and, thump. The car came to an abrupt halt as if someone had slammed down on it with their own 2 hands. They immediately got out of the car and saw 2 woman-sized handprints in the white flour on the hood. After hours. It was 9 o'clock, time for the store to close. Valerie, Ginny, and Kelly were the only ones working. As they were cleaning up the store, a pile of shirts fell to the floor. None of the girls touched it. "It's probably the ghost," Ginny said. "Very funny," said Kelly. "No, really," Valerie replied. "He's a little boy. He likes to play." Kelly still didn't take them seriously, though. She thought they were teasing her because she was younger. But when she went into the back room to get her keys to go home, she saw a flash of a young boy in the mirror next to her. When she looked back, Her keys had been placed on the floor.
Home Alone. Here's one that scared the living crap out of me when I was younger. A young boy is sleeping in his bed on a usual night. He hears footsteps outside his door, and peeks out of his eyes to see what is happening. His door swings open quietly to reveal the murderer, carrying the corpse of his parents. After silently propping them up on a chair, he wrote something on the wall in the blood of the dead bodies. He then hides under the child's bed. The child is scared beyond belief. He can't read the writing on the wall and he knows the man is under his bed. Like any child, he pretends that he slept through the whole thing and hasn't woken yet. He lays still as the bodies, quietly hearing the breaths from under his bed. An hour passes, and his eyes are adjusting more and more to the darkness. He tries to make out the words, but it's a struggle. He gasps when he finally makes out the sentence, "I know you're awake." He feels something shift underneath his bed. Of course, you'd have to be awake to read it. The murderer is technically right.